Does a computer use more electricity when charging USB devices? Something I've always wondered. If I constantly hook up cell phones, hard drives and the like via USB to my computer, will it eat up more on the electricity bill? Or are the USB ports using up electricity by just being enabled anyway, thus not affecting the power usage?
Short answer. Does a computer use more electricity when charging USB devices? Generally yes, but not necessarily as much as you would expect. It won't be free power, but it might be obtained more efficiently. It really depends on the particular power supply's efficiency curve, and the point at which you are operating it at, and power consumption is affected by software. If your computer power supply is underloaded, for example idle state, adding more load will slightly increase the power efficiency for the whole system. If your computer power supply is correctly loaded, it will be near its peak efficiency, which is generally much better than a USB wall charger. If your computer power supply is already overloaded, which should never happen, you have more pressing issues than USB power efficiency. Long answer. A USB port can output maximums of 500 mA, use 1 amp, 2, and 950 mA, use 3, at 5V, which gives maximums of 2. 5 watts, use 1 amp, 2, and 4. 75 watts, use 3. USB ports don't consume power by themselves. Without anything plugged, they are just open circuits. Now, if you get 1A, 5 watts, out a use 3 port, it will usually increase the global power consumption by 6 watts, depending on your power supply efficiency, which would be an increase of 2% to 5% of your computer power consumption. But, in some cases, it may be different. If you take a look at some SU efficiency curve from Anantech, you'll see the efficiency is not a constant value, it varies a lot depending on the load applied to the SU. You'll see on that 900W SU that at low power, 50 watts to 200W, the curve is so steep that an increase in the load will entail a substantial increase in efficiency. If the increase in efficiency is high enough, it would mean that in some cases, your computer may not need to actually draw an extra 5 watts from the wall socket when you're drawing an extra 5 watts from a USB port. Let's take an example of a computer drawing 200W on a SU with an actual efficiency of 80% at 200W. Now, depending on the efficiency curve of the SU between 200W and 205W, the relative power consumption of the USB device may be completely different. This is the usual simplified case, where the efficiency is the same, hence the power consumption of the USB device is equivalent to 5 watts, 80% equals 25 watts. In this case, the SU efficiency is increasing between 200W and 205W, thus you can't deduce the relative power consumption of the USB device without taking into account the whole computer power consumption, and you'll see the relative increase at the wall socket may actually be lower than 5 watts. This behavior only happens because, in that case, the SU is underloaded, so it's not the usual case, but it's still a practical possibility. In this case, the SU draws the same power from the wall socket, whatever the load it receives. This is the behavior of a Zener regulator where all unnecessary power are dissipated into heat. It's a behavior that can be observed in some kind of low-end SU at very small load. That last case is a purely hypothetical case where the SU would actually consume less power at higher load. As at Marx Thomas said, this is not something you can observe from a practical power supply, but it's still theoretically possible and proves that the instinctive Tansdale rule cannot always be applied that easily. Conclusion. If you need to charge a lot of 5V devices, it's better to do it from an already running computer than from multiple wall chargers. It won't be free, but it will be more efficient. Also note that you may need USB ports with 1A capability, for example use 3, in order to get the same charge speed.
Tansdale also applies here. You don't get power for nothing. Otherwise we could just use the USB ports to power another computer, and use the other computer to power the first. It is a fun idea, but it does not work. The energy for charging is rather small though. USB 1 or 2 use 100 to 500 mA at 5 volts. That is a maximum of 2.5 watt, compared to normal idle power drain of a PC that is rather small. Normal, 50 watt for an office PC to 150 watt idle for a high-end PC. And roughly thrice that when gaming, compiling etc. etc.
Yes. It's a basic rule of physics: if something's taking power away from your computer must get that power from somewhere. USB ports don't consume power just by being enabled, any more than a power outlet would consume power just by having the switch on with nothing plugged in. Alright, there is a minimal amount of power consumed by the USB controller chip monitoring to see if something's plugged in, but that's a tiny amount of power.
Yes, you are using more electricity, but not in amounts that will make a huge difference to your bill at the end of the month.
If you want to support the channel, please consider subscribing.